All right, we're back. We've got some more CFL topics to talk about. We'll go with Eric Tillman next. Very interesting here, and if you like conspiracy theories, I'm sure you'll like this one too. Okay, well, Eric Tillman's office and family is in Regina. We all know that, first of all, he got fired over the weekend. His office and family, again, in Regina. And this is what I find interesting. He really commuted. I didn't know about that originally, that he went from Regina to Edmonton for their games. Only road game, I remember we were talking about just in the break. Yep. You mentioned that he went to Toronto. Interesting there. But here, you also have Brendan Taman with the Riders, who's in his final year of his contract. Now, there's a lot of talk with this firing by Tillman that he will come back to Regina and want to be a part of the Riders again. Is that true, and do you guys believe that?
Can believe anything in the CFL. I don't think there's room for Tillman in Regina. I hope there isn't. I'm not a big Eric Tillman fan. I think he's a guy that likes to be in control of every aspect of the football club, and I think that's what got him in trouble in Edmonton, where he's micromanaging from Regina on a football club that's in Edmonton. Eskimos like to call themselves a community organization, which they are, but their general manager lives in Regina, and that really didn't sit very well with a lot of executive and the board of directors, and thus when push came to shove, and I think what had happened is that they just had enough of it, and the way that he was not treating some of the players and some of the management staffs with respect, it was the end of the line. And you look at November, they have to get ready for next year. Even though there's the playoffs this weekend, they have to look and get ready for next year. Eric Tillman's not going to be in their plans. Let's get rid of him now.
For sure. I think it would be very surprising to see a team bring back a general manager that they had such a short time ago in their history. I don't think you'd see that in any other sport, although the CFL, as we were talking earlier, a league where one guy can own two teams, maybe, you never know, that might be something you'd see there. But Toronto I could see as a landing spot for him. For a conspiracy theory, I don't know. I mean, so he's definitely made some questionable trades. I don't know.
Purposely maybe wanted to get himself fired in Edmonton to go back to Regina. And you mentioned it was very interesting. You just said Toronto. That's another team that he's come by or has been rumored to go to. Trading Ricky Ray over there, perhaps maybe going over there. That was the talk on Twitter. And, of course, Dave Naylor with TSN had mentioned that previously, too, as well, saying, hey, he might go to Toronto after this season, seeing what happens. His average tenure is about 3.5 years per wherever club he goes to. So Toronto might be the place that he wants to be at. It should be interesting. But, yeah, the whole David Braley thing, though, owns both BC and Toronto. BC had the Grey Cup last year, won the Grey Cup. Toronto has the Grey Cup this year, probably wants them to win it. Sure enough, he's also, I believe, an alternate governor with the CFL, too. So I'm sure he probably had a little bit of a hand pushing Ricky Ray to Toronto.
So if BC and Toronto are in the Grey Cup, you know one thing for sure, Braley's going to be getting the cup.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if he wanted both of them in there, too, the two biggest markets in Canada, right? Yeah. Well, that should be interesting. Was it a bad firing, by the way, by the Eskimos to get rid of Tillman?
I think the timing's probably not the best, and that's kind of the fans are wondering what's going on. Are you giving up on the team? We have a playoff game coming up this weekend, and you fire him a week before the playoffs. That's one thing, but you have to look at it. This has been in the works for a while. I don't think they decided, they woke up Saturday morning saying, let's fire Eric today. No, I think they've been thinking about it for a while.
You sure about Mr. Rhodes, the CEO, president of the Eskimos, didn't think about it? Because he said, I made the decision, I wanted to do this, so.
I'm sure that's one thing that they had actually mentioned is they had waited for him to come into town to fire him in person, and he was in Regina, and they had to wait for him to actually show up in town before they could fire him. So,
don't want to fire a guy over the phone.
No, they can't. All right, let's move on to the Bombers. They kept, unlike the Eskimos who got rid of their GM for some reason, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers decided to keep theirs, even though they had a dismal season. Couldn't blame Paul LaPolice, and personally you can't blame Tim Burke. Tim Burke is now been officially named the head coach. They got rid of the interim tag. Big mistake by the Bombers brass to give Joe Mack another chance.
I think it's a very interesting decision for sure. I mean, it's in sports, your lifetime is fairly short. If you don't show anything, you're usually showing the door, and he's had a rough tenure there. So I think actually his biggest mistake was letting LaPolice go. I think he was a good coach, but I'm sure there's some Bomber fans that probably disagree with me, but definitely surprising.
I would like to be a Bomber fan right now. They were supposed to have a new stadium. They were supposed to be in that this year. They've had a terrible season. Everybody wants to fire the GM. Everybody wants to fire the head coach, but they keep both, and they still don't have their stadium ready. Yeah, it's great being a Bomber fan right now.
They said next year. Who knows? Maybe September. They might push it back again if weather permitting. Let's move on to the Monday Night Football game. The Winnipeg, or sorry, I keep thinking I'm on the Winnipeg train. Let's talk about the Philadelphia Eagles, another team that struggled. And sure enough, they lost last night, taking on the New Orleans Saints. The Saints now improved to 3-5. With this win, it's a big win. They've now won 3 out of 4, and that's New Orleans. Does this win, or is this win significant enough for them to make the playoffs, or at least give them that push to make the playoffs?
For sure, I think that's a team that's been underperforming all year and stumbled out of the gate without their head coach and just needed to get their feet under them. And I think you're starting to see the real Saints now. I thought before the year they would still make the playoffs, and I think they definitely still could. Their
defense is still suspect. You know, they did have 7 sacks last night, but also gave up over 400 yards in offense against an Eagles team that, you know, has struggled at times. Yeah, the Saints team, like, turning things around. Eagles, you know, you look at last year, they were supposed to be the team to beat last year, and they're still struggling this season. So something has to give in Philadelphia.
And they have plenty of all-stars on that team, too, which makes you scratch your head. So if you look at it, Andy Reid said in post-game conference that he's going to still stick with Michael Vick. Is that the right decision, or should they go to their backup?
I think with Vic, I mean, your backup is a rookie, so I think you still have to live and die by Vic. Watching the game last night, the offensive line didn't help him out a lot. He does make some bad decisions. I don't know if at this point of his career those are things that you can actually correct or not, but I don't know if you have a better option than Vic right now. He's
an exciting quarterback, and he's exciting for a number of reasons because he makes some great plays, but at the same time, he makes some plays that you scratch your head and you're wondering, this is a veteran quarterback, this is an all-star or all-pro. Yeah, I have a hard time believing it.
Yeah, he goes from getting sacked, 7 times, and then all of a sudden rolls out of the pocket, finds Deshaun Jackson for a 77-yard touchdown, right? Yeah. All right, let's kind of move on to the NFL, and we'll kind of talk about the rookie quarterbacks. And, well, what can you say about Andrew Luck leading his team to victory over the Miami Dolphins? Which rookie quarterback will lead his team to the playoffs? And another guy is also Russell Wilson to put in this aspect. His team's 5-4, and he leads the rookie quarterbacks in terms of touchdown passes thrown. Russell Wilson, Andrew Luck, Ryan Tannehill, or RG3? Who's more likely to lead their team to the playoffs?
Well, Luck, without a doubt. The way that football club is playing right now, they're inspired. Their head coach is going through what he's going through right now with fighting cancer. You know, that speech that he gave that team after the football game, if that can get you inspired for the rest of the season, nothing will. I think Luck's a great quarterback, and the Colts are, you know, going to be an interesting team as they go down the stretch here.
I agree with Luck on that. I think he's actually pulling that team with him. He's actually carrying that team a little bit because the defense still isn't very good. Their point differential is in the negative still. And you can see what happened last year when they didn't have good quarterbacking. I think that's still the same team, basically, but with Luck, he's a game changer for sure.
Yeah, like they were saying, if the playoffs started that week, you would have seen both Miami and Indy in the playoffs. What about Seattle? I think Russell Wilson has done a fantastic job in terms of controlling, and that defense has been phenomenal this season. I think that they have a great chance of making the playoffs, more so than Andrew Luck and the Colts this season.
Well, more or less who they're playing against and who they're up against for a playoff spot out in the West compared to where the Colts are. I kind of like the fact that the Seahawks are and do have a chance to possibly go deep in the playoffs, and yeah, their defense is playing phenomenal right now.
Okay, that's one of the biggest things. All right, we'll talk about defensive performance that was phenomenal. Let's talk about the Chicago Bears. That was absolutely ridiculous, putting up 51 points. Not all of it was by the defense, but certainly it led to some of those great offensive drives. It also led to Brian Urlacher, who looked like an old man, but still got a touchdown. He returned for a pick 6. What can you say was the better performance? The Bears defense, and we'll talk about Tampa Bay and Doug Martin, what he's done over the last 2 weeks, and it really has solidified that running game for him, taking away, I guess it would be Blunt's job out in Tampa. What would you consider the better performance of the past week? Would it be the defense or Doug Martin?
I would go with Doug Martin just because it's such a rare feat to have a game like that. I mean, this is a guy in his first year. He's only the second player in NFL history, I believe, to rush for 250 yards and 4 touchdowns in one game. So the defense was spectacular, but you do see some other good defensive performances. Not in the past week. I mean, the Bears are playing like it's the 80s again. Their defense is just unreal. But Doug Martin, I mean, wow, he's just been awesome, and what a week for him. I'm glad he's on my fantasy team.
Yeah, we're getting close to Thanksgiving down in the U.S., and it's getting that time of the year where it's getting a little colder in Chicago, and it's when their defense steps it up, and it's great to see Urlacher You look like a young guy out there. I love the Bears defense.
And
just
Tillman too.
Smash mouth. Oh, Tillman.
Tillman. How many strips did he have?
Oh, just their defense is playing great, and kind of a Bears fan in a way, but I love to see them go deep in the playoffs if they get to the playoffs.
Well, you know what? They have a strong chance right now leading that NFC North division. All right, we're going to take a quick timeout. We'll be back with Over Under next.